So, day two of CES, or at least my trip to CES, given that, well, CES officially doesn't even start until the day after today. Day two for me is done. And super shout out to Elgato and Corsair for sponsoring our trip to CES 2020 and sending us out. And we primarily focused on Corsair today. They actually had their press conference this morning, and you've probably already seen a lot of the news. However, I actually got to get hands on and actually use their new capture card, the 4K 60S Plus, as well as some of the other cool streaming tech that they have coming. So stay tuned as we're going to talk about that. But diving into their original press conference, they really covered, the whole Corsair family of products and companies that they've been building. So it started out with Scuf Gaming, who talked about, their history building modular and, competitive controllers for PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and showed off, of all things, they have a pillow coming, and it's actually an interesting concept. It seems totally silly, and most people are probably going to be like, yeah, okay. But in reality, it proved a point of, something I struggle with, is it's a posture pillow for when you're gaming with the controller. Because when you're gaming with the controller, a lot of people, myself included, even when I'm at a desk, start bending over and hunching over, and you're sitting your controller kind of on your knees and bending over for that, and that's super unhealthy. Whereas they have this big inflatable pillow which allows you to comfortably rest your forearms and your elbows on the pillow and keep your controller rested there as well, so your wrists and your arms are supported, which is important while gaming, and it kind of helps you keep a standard posture. So it's one of those little things where it's not a new controller, but it's actually kind of clever that they decided to think of it and really put that together, and mention that they have really big plans for 2020 and 2021 releases, but they didn't have anything additional to share at the time. Then the Origin PC people came up to talk about their further integration with Corsair products. In fact, all of their Origin PCs pretty much now come with Hydro X water cooling capabilities, and really utilizing the Hydro X possibilities, and they have some more cooling things coming soon with that, which is pretty cool. But even further, they are now integrating iCUE with all of their Origin PCs, or at least a good chunk of them. I'm not going to say all of them, that's probably not technically true, but their Neuron and Chronos desktops are getting iCUE support, so you'll be able to control not only the LEDs of the system itself, but any Corsair integrated hardware, the Elgato lights if supported, as well as any Corsair accessories and peripherals. So you'll be able to control all of that from one place within your Origin PC, which is pretty cool. This is also coming to their Evo laptops, their Millennium and Genesis desktops as well. So they're really trying to make it to where you can control your entire Origin PC from this iCUE software. iCUE announcements did not stop there, though. We're going to come back to Origin because they had another cool announcement. But continuing to talk about iCUE, for the first time ever, apparently, Asus's Aura Sync is now getting compatibility with Corsair iCUE, and this is currently exclusive. They said it's exclusive for now, and when asked how long, they just said a long time. But you will be able to control Aura Sync hardware, so your motherboards and things like that, from iCUE. And then going the other way around, the only currently supported, vice versa, is you can control Corsair Dominator RAM from Aura Sync. You won't be able to support all of the, because Dominator RAM supports like a crap ton of RGB profiles in the RAM, but you'll be able to control some of them and to control the lights from Aura Sync if you prefer using that. Or if you prefer using iCUE to kind of manage your entire setup, you can now control Aura Sync from there, which is apparently a pretty big deal because it has not been done before. And Asus is really happy to partner with Corsair on this, which is pretty cool because that means, again, even more of these components are going to be integrated together and just gives you a lot more control without trying to use 3 different RGB apps to control everything. You get it kind of all in one place. Going back to Origin, they also announced the return of their Big O, which is actually more of a little O because they've actually managed to pack it in this small dual chassis from Corsair, which has either a full gaming PC with either a PlayStation 4 Pro or an Xbox One S inside, and then you can also get it with an Elgato 4K 60 Pro capture card, so it's all looped through together. So you basically have one drop-in box that is a complete game streaming setup for PC games and console games, and that's pretty bonkers. The starting price for the Big O configuration is $24.99, and that does not include the cost of the 4K 60 Pro. So if you want to include that, it bumps it up a little closer to $3,000. but they were unfortunately only able to use the Xbox One S instead of the X due to the removal of the disk drive. Apparently the X cannot operate without a disk drive, so that's a little unfortunate, but you're still getting, console gaming and PC gaming paired together with potential capture card integration, and it's pretty cool. I do remember their original Big O concept that had the Xbox 360 and the PS3, all integrated together. And the consoles are water cooled, so it's not just they glued an Xbox or a PlayStation to the side of the PC. It is taken apart and integrated into the case and completely water cooled. So performance and noise from those systems is not going to be a problem either, which is, it's pretty crazy the stuff they did. I didn't get a whole lot of footage, but it's an awesome concept that I've always been a big fan of since the 7th gen consoles. And they also made a point of saying that they will continue to support future technologies with the Big O concept, which I think was a hint at possible Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 inclusion. However, since those consoles are already so far off, and they're not going to be able to share anything, but we could see a Big O with future consoles involved, potentially at some point. So what about streaming hardware? That's what you're here for, right? Streaming hardware, there is some great stuff coming. First, before we get to full Elgato stuff, the Elgato Stream Deck is now getting integrated to the Corsair K95 keyboard. So you'll be able to use the G keys, or as they're now called S keys, on those keyboards and fully map them as if they were Elgato Stream Deck buttons. And so the Stream Deck app is being updated to support those buttons, and they've even developed a sort of overlay to give you a preview icon on your screen if you want to overlay it on top of your game or whatever, so you know exactly which button you need to press since you don't have the Stream Deck, screen-backed keys. So you can then, change scenes, turn off your light, mute your microphone real quick. All of the normal streaming or program integration, you can have that on your Corsair K95. And they also announced, I don't think it's fully releasing yet, a new K95 Platinum XT. I hope I said that right. XT is the big name they're running with for it, which is a new revision on this flagship keyboard, which also, again, has those keys integrated. The next step we need is just to get some Stream Deck specific keycaps going for it. Hint, 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 hint. Over on the Elgato front, holy crap, I got to go hands-on with their new capture card. Before their capture card, though, they announced a new key light, the Elgato Key Light Air, which has half the LEDs, so it's roughly half the size. However, it still puts out a metric crap ton of light, and it comes with its own unique stand that's kind of designed to look like a standard desk lamp. So you could still use it as a desk lamp, and it doesn't look too gamery or streamery and wouldn't stand out and, necessarily draw anyone's attention as being too crazy. And they had these things all over the Corsair booth using as product lights, which was a super clever way to go. They're really nice and soft and bright. Despite being a smaller source, it's still soft enough that you're not having too crazy harsh of a light. I'm actually using a light that's smaller than the Key Light Air. I keep wanting to call it the Key Light Nano for some reason. Maybe that means they should develop a product like that. But I'm using a light currently that is smaller than the Key Light Air, and while it's really harsh and blinding my eyes, for the most part from what I've seen in the video, it is actually not that harsh on video. So the Key Light Air is going to be really pretty cool, and that is $60 cheaper than the full-size key light. So roughly $129.99, which is a pretty solid price for it, and keep in mind that does come with full mounting hardware, which I can appreciate. I would like them to see them start developing more accessories for it. An expandable softbox like the Aperture Tri 8, where you have an extra softbox on top of that, a gel system, a grid system, something like that, just to keep expanding it. But they are, this is more affordable and it's smaller, so it kind of addresses a couple different pain points that I've brought up in my own key light review as well. Capture card wise, I got hands-on with the 4K 60S Plus. Unfortunately, I didn't get to take one with me, but I got to play with it, I got to hold it, I got to use it to record, I got to save a little bit of footage here, so you're seeing some of the, although it was probably in HDR, so we'll see how Resolve handles it, but I did capture some Horizon Zero Dawn footage in 4K with that device. It is pretty cool. So Elgato's new capture card, they've been needing to address the USB 4K market because there hasn't really been anything just yet. But the reason, and I keep sharing this, the reason we haven't seen a 4K 60 USB before, or the 4K 60S, this is the S Plus. Where did the S go? The reason we haven't seen that is USB 3 bandwidth is not enough to support the kind of uncompressed 4K data rates that we would need to see for an HD60S Plus or 4K 60 Pro style capture card for that via USB. So they took a route that I did not expect at all. I was expecting them to find some way to make it work, but I wasn't really sure how. And they went crazy with it. This thing is a fully enclosed box that has a dedicated SD card writer on it, and it has its own built-in HEVC encoder in it, so it can record 4K 60 HDR relatively high bitrate footage to an SD card, so you can use it with, a laptop that isn't necessarily capable of recording 4K, and you can use it on the fly, and it can be used over USB for standard 4K capture for those who can't or don't want to use a 4K 60 Pro. It is pretty bonkers. I got to test it out. Over on the front, you have a 3.5mm line-in input in case you want to mix in other audio sources. We're still working on the software for that. It has a dedicated record button right on the front. It's capacitive, which is okay. It's got a SD card reader on the side, like I said, a writer, so that you could just pop in, and it's not any micro SD crap. It is full-size SD, which is always appreciated from me. And then, as requested in my HD60S Plus review, all of the inputs and outputs for everything else is on the back, which is great, much appreciated. So you've got HDMI 2.0 input and pass-through, real-time pass-through as always, and then you have two different USB Type-C ports. One is for wall power, as it does require that, and then one is for data for your computer if you want to use it. But you don't need to use it. You can just run it off of wall power and capture to your SD card and never connect it to a computer ever. And that is how they had it demoed at the booth. Is they had a laptop set up, they had a PS4 Pro set up, and they had the capture card set up, and you could simply just record to the SD card, pop that SD card in the laptop, and immediately start watching these recordings without any extra work, which is pretty cool. I am super stoked for this. There will be, I will go ahead and acknowledge, there will be some video delay over USB, kind of like the original HD60, because of the onboard encoder, because there is no way for them to send an uncompressed, as I mentioned, 4K stream over USB. We will be dealing with 100 milliseconds or so of delay, and there will be some audio sync requirements if you're streaming with that in OBS for that, and I will cover that more in depth in my full review and tutorials. But the trade-off is well worth it, because this makes 4K streaming and recording way more accessible. Like, this is, for some of my portable recordings and for a lot of my PC-less stuff, I use my big fancy Atomos Ninja Inferno, which cost me like $1,000. This thing's only $400, which was the launch price of the 4K 60 Pro. $400, so less than half of the price of the Atomos for 4K 60 HDR recording in a format that isn't going to break most people's hard drives, because the Atomos records in ProRes and nonsense that game streamers do not need. You get it in HEVC, ready to go to upload. Use YouTube's upload. If you can't edit 4K 60 footage, that's fine. Upload it straight to YouTube. Use YouTube's editor if you want. There are so many options, and this makes it so much more accessible. They also teased one more product that isn't quite ready to talk about yet. We're going to talk about it more in the spring of this year, and that is what they're calling Project Wave. And they show some graphics and some visuals for it, and it's kind of like, okay, but they didn't reveal exactly what it is. It looks like a microphone. I'm going to say it looks like a microphone, but there was enough extra to it that I feel like that's not the full picture. So it'll be interesting to see when we can learn more, and I will say I will have many details for you when time comes, but it was really great to get my hands on with the new capture card immediately. Like, my big worry with CES was I was going to get my hands on a bunch of products and gadgets and projects that I just would be unable to really share any details about anytime soon. And I'm like, yeah, this is cool, but I don't get to touch it. I got to plug it in, I got to hit record, I got to test it, and I got to use it. I didn't get to test the 4K 60 capture utility integration yet, but that will be coming soon. But I got to use it, and that just feels way better to really get a feel of how it's working. And I think for a lot of people, this is what everyone's been waiting for a 4K capture, portably, accessibly, and reasonably, especially for builds that don't have enough PCIe bandwidth or anything like that. So I'm super excited. I also forgot to mention two other products that Corsair had on display. One being their new air cooler, their first air cooler product in 10 years. And it's a dual fan, I believe dual 120 mil fan tower cooler with 4 heat pipes. And my favorite part of this that would be called like an innovation is that it has a sliding lock mechanism design for the fans, because all of the other similar style air coolers require you to manage these little flimsy metal clips that do nothing but tear up my skin, or I tear up the fins on the cooler using a flathead screwdriver to try to put them in place. These slide on and lock into place. None of that juggling or dealing with that. And you can still swap out the fans. It comes with their very high quality ML120 fans, but you can slot in RGB, you can do whatever you want. So it's pretty cool to see them kind of return to air coolers. They also teased what they're calling Concept Orion, which is this really interesting LED technology that is produced on this little capacitive film sheet wherein the LEDs completely disappear when they're not on. They don't have a formal product for this yet, but it is something that we'll be seeing from them very soon. Wrapping up today, we also got to visit the Nvidia booth. I got to squeeze in last minute there. They were showing a lot of stuff. I didn't cover the full thing. We talked a little bit about the Nvidia Studio project, which has been their big push for the creative industry. And I've talked about that a lot on my channel with regards to, really pushing Blender and DaVinci Resolve and Adobe Premiere into new ways, and they have a lot of really cool tools that they've come up with to utilize the RTX graphics cards, the extra tools on it, to use AI to, automatically reframe a video. If you need to go square or vertical from widescreen video, it will track your subject and automatically crop that for you, which for me is actually going to be really useful because I do a lot of screen capture stuff that I want to adapt to mobile formats, but it is really frustrating trying to crop that myself, and I'm hoping I'll be able to train it, get it used to tracking screen capture enough that I might be able to make that work. But they had some cool examples for that. They've got DaVinci Resolve is fully equipped with AI features for face tracking. I've used that a lot in my videos for improving face, making you look a little bit better. Not like I look today. I'm recording this at 11:41 p.m. This is day 2 without Sunkissed again, so no caffeine this week, and it's been a day. But anyway, lots of AI features there, and then the new Blender Cycles. No, not Cycle. Eevee, the new Blender Eevee render engine, where you can start playing everything back in real time without needing to wait for it to render and stuff. That was the big push for me to start learning Blender, which I need to get back to. Lots of cool stuff there. And then we went over to the esports side, and they started showing off some new displays. They have the new LG TVs, which are all G-Sync certified and 4K HDR, HDMI 2.1, so they can do 4K 120 hertz. Once we have graphics cards that have HDMI 2.1, which we don't at the moment, but I want that TV in my living room right now. So anyone at LG, hit me up. I need that TV in my living room ASAP. Pretty cool stuff. And then they have new G-Sync HDR displays, which pushes the HDR max peak brightness up to 1400 nits. And they have a lot more local dimming zones. It bumped it up to I forgot the exact number, but it's an absurd, in the thousands number of local dimming zones to help with haloing and to really make it precise. And they showed a demo, which was obviously impossible to capture on camera. And that's the problem with talking about HDR. But they had a demo of a big explosion scene in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And on the normal HDR 400 monitor, it was yeah, it looks all right. That's what you expect. And then on the new fancy HDR G-Sync Ultimate monitor, it is so bright and so clear, and you keep so much of the saturation. It's just a whole different experience, which I wasn't expecting. What I also wasn't expecting was to actually see a difference on 360 hertz displays. I've been on the high refresh bandwagon for a very long time. I'm the CRT guy. I like CRTs because they are high refresh rate way before LCDs were. And so I've been on that bandwagon, but I've also kind of been okay, past 120 hertz or so, you get diminishing returns and it's not really worth it. They had a 240 hertz and a 360 hertz display scrolling side by side next to each other, and immediately I was able to see a smoothing difference between the two. I don't have a high enough frame rate camera with me to really capture that, but you can actually read the text on the 360 hertz display that you can't read on the 240 hertz, which is pretty crazy. And then of course they had, kind of from the Linus Tech Tips video, precision and response time improvements from 60 hertz to 360 hertz, just showing because it's a 6 times increase from 16 milliseconds or 16.67 milliseconds at 60 hertz to 2.8 milliseconds per frame at 360 hertz. It was pretty bonkers. I don't know personally that I'm willing to drop down to 1080p for that advantage, especially since it's only specific games that you can really run at 360 hertz. But I could see that picking up more and more for esports, and it will be interesting to see how the streaming scene reacts, because there's currently nothing that can even pass through a 360 hertz signal in order to capture frames. So we may not actually see esports leagues adopt it just yet until they have a better way of getting the signal, but we'll see. I am very excited for that. So it's a great time for streamers, a lot of cool streaming tech coming, and I'm super stoked. I'm glad I got to check it all out. So thanks to Corsair and Elgato for sending me out to CES 2020. We've got some cool meetings tomorrow and throughout the week, and hopefully we'll hit the show floor and things like that. And I've got to meet up with a few other YouTubers so far, so that's been a blast. And thank you guys so much for your support on the first day one vlog. That was interesting, my ridiculous hotel room. And I'm going to go take another bath in my giant oversized tub because, again, it's almost midnight. I carried around a way too heavy backpack all freaking day, and I really feel like my arms and back here are just blistered from it, so I'm really hoping they're not. And I'm just carrying around my camera tomorrow. I have learned my lesson. I really hope I can track down some Sunkist though, because caffeine. I will say, at the Corsair press conference, I got my first ever Scuf controller, which is pretty freaking cool. I haven't even opened it yet. It is supposed to be cyberpunk themed. I don't know which one. They had a couple variants they were giving out. This one is a PlayStation 4 one. It's their Impact. Ooh, I got the red one. So I know they had this red one. They also had some sort, it was like a yellowish greenish one, but this is cyberpunk themed. And it is their Scuf Impact controller. So it has DualShock standard placement thumbsticks, although these are, I believe, one of the higher versions. These cool little red out buttons. And then they have 4 paddles on the back instead of 2. So you've got 4 paddles back here for using it. Gives a huge competitive advantage in shooters, especially ones with all the jetpacks and stuff like Titanfall and things like that. And so I am super stoked to test this out. Unfortunately, this is not the one where you can get the hair triggers, but I believe you can customize the triggers a little bit here to get them kind of closer. But they have one where it is literally just like a mouse click, and I got to play around with that, and it is a lot of fun. So I'm pretty sold on these. I've always wanted one, but I've never really been, I could never really justify it, but I think I'm going to be ordering another one based on this. So pretty stoked. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to say go subscribe on Floatplane so you don't miss early access to videos and behind the scenes content, but obviously none of this is early access, so yeah. But have a great rest of your week, guys, or until the next vlog. Huge freaking shout out to Jason from Bite My Bits for the GorillaPod and mouse hookup. I already shot my video, but the GorillaPod will come handy in the next couple days, and I'm literally just now getting to editing what I just shot, and so the mouse will be quite literally invaluable. He is a lifesaver. He didn't bring me any Sunkist though, so I'm docking away some points.